Hi everybody, Matt here with the Security Industry Association. Welcome to episode 1 of the Security Matters podcast. In today's episode, our very own DeAndre Thornton and his guests break down the business case for DE&I. I'm excited for this episode as we unravel the compelling stories and strategies behind successful organizations that have harnessed the power of diversity to fuel innovation, enhance company culture, and drive sustainable growth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Security Matters podcast, brought to you by the Security Industry Association. SIA is a leading trade association for global security solution providers, with over 1,300 innovative member companies representing thousands of security leaders and experts to shape the future. Today, we'll be talking about the business case for DE&I and how it impacts your bottom line. And with that, allow me to introduce my great panelists. We have Lori Hudno, the Director of Sage Resources with Sage Integration. We have Nikki Rogers, the Director of Talent Management and Employee Engagement for Securitas Technologies. And last but not least, we have Aaron Lopez, the Global Director of Diversity and Inclusion at HID. Now, if you want to say a little about 2-5-minute spill of what you're doing at the company. Lori, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I've been with Sage about 4 years, new to the industry 4 years ago, not so new anymore. And it's just been an awesome ride. I come from the beverage world, so it was a bit of a change, but I love everything that we do, everything that we stand for, protecting, our clients and engaging our employees. It's been phenomenal.
Great. Love that. Nikki?
Sure. So I am the Director of Employee Engagement and Talent Management. And so my title really does reflect what I do. And so that encompasses everything that has to do with an employee, I'd say kind of after they join and are onboarded, really to do with their development, promotion, making sure that we have a good succession plan, but also making sure that we have employees that are happy and want to stay with us and grow with us.
Yes, and we love that. We're always trying to focus on how to give back to the younger community and kind of keep them in the industry. And Aaron, you want to finish off?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat about this. And I've been with HID for a little over a year. This is a new role for this organization. So they have started their journey on ensuring that their workplace is diverse and equitable and inclusive. And, I've learned a lot. We are in the security industry. We're kind of a hybrid between security industry and tech industry. So it's a very unique place to be, and I quite like the reception that I've received so far. Our organization spans 50 countries, and so we have a lot of cultural diversity within our ranks. And how we get those folks to feel like they belong and to feel that they're valued is part of our mission and our vision. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you all today.
That's great. Kind of leads us right into our first question, I should say. I'll start off with you, Lori. Why does diversity matter to you and the company, and why you feel like it should matter to people's bottom line? Jumping right into it.
Thank you. I thought about this hard, and really, we are all created. If we're not all created the same, and that's what matters to me, because I'm unique. You're unique. You're unique. We're all unique, and that's what my life experience has shaped who I've become. And so is yours. So I can only continue to grow from where I'm at right now by keeping an open mind and absorbing what is presented in front of me from each and everybody, that I encounter. So that's why diversity matters to me. In my world, I am the people person here at Sage Integration. And so people are my people. They're my people, every one of them, and I keep an open mind. I push aside everything that I hear to focus on who's in front of me. How are they feeling today and why? And how can I help? The biggest thing we can do is sit and listen and see how we can help. Don't be too quick to jump to conclusions or action, but listen and then talk through it with them.
Yeah, it's great, Lori. A lot of us listen, while we're listening, we should be listening to understand and kind of but most people listen to respond. So that's a great, kind of listening to understand. And Nikki, why does diversity matter to you?
Yeah, diversity matters to me because I like variety. I like being able to interact with people that are smarter than me, people that bring different backgrounds to the workplace. Because ultimately, it makes us all better, right? We use those perspectives to come up with the best solutions. If we all thought the same way or had the same backgrounds, we probably wouldn't come up with the things that are the most creative or most innovative or really pushing the edge. We also, if we were all the same, we may not think about the rest of the world and how our products or our services may impact other people. So it's important to have that diversity. One, just in my life, I like to have the diversity in people around me, but also in the workplace. Obviously, it's just critical for our business to make sure, especially in the security industry, where you hear things about,
Yeah.
even in the AI, there's bias kind of built into AI. We want to make sure that we're protecting all of us, wherever we're coming from, whatever our skin looks like, whoever we love, et cetera, right? We want to make
Yes.
sure that everybody's protected. And so in that, we want to make sure that we're reflecting different pieces of our society.
That's great, Nikki. And you kind of touched on this, like how it matters all around the world. And Aaron, you work with people in different, like 50 countries. How does diversity matter to you? And matter more rather, why does it matter to you? And how do you balance that with different industries across different sectors?
I think there are two reasons why diversity matters to me. First of all, it matters to me personally. I am a mixed race, homosexual gay guy who always felt like I just was not valued, and always felt as though, whether it be because of my race. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and Arizona is a border state. So I always felt some otherness from society and our communities here, growing up. And then just being, gay, and really hearing some of the vitriol that is out there with minorities and groups that are underrepresented historically. It just always was a kinship for me, that I felt as though I have something in common with the underdogs. And I fully understand the value that underrepresented groups bring to communities, bring to society, and bring to this country and this world. So I love to cheer for the underdog. I love to have the underdogs find their voices, find their confidence, find their strength, because it's been a long journey for me personally in order to do that. The second part of it is that I really feel like that when I work for an organization, I want to make my mark on that organization, and I want that organization to succeed. And so I think that diversity is incredibly important for that. We do have, a lot of different perspectives. We do have a lot of different ideas, but if people don't feel safe speaking up and sharing those ideas, sharing those perspectives, then their company's not going to innovate. We keep hearing that word on this call already. The innovation is key. And with the way that companies evolve so quickly these days, if a company like mine that is important, technology is important, new ideas are important. If a company like mine doesn't innovate, then we're going to find ourselves like the Kodaks or the Blockbusters of the security and tech industry. So we need to make sure that we understand that there are employees out there that have things to say. Let's at least give them the space to say it and consider those ideas, and see what we can do to stay relevant.
That was great, Aaron. Like I kind of got distracted. I was like, "Oh, this is so much. It's so much, like so detailed and so great." But I imagine I wanted to ask my next question, like, how would you define diversity and inclusion? But with what you just said, it kind of just, people always have the understanding like, oh, it's just race, or it's just like a different sexual orientation. It kind of encompasses more than that. It's like able-bodied people. It's just different levels to it. So, Nikki, how would you define like diversity and inclusion? How would you define
Yeah. So diversity to me is all the things that make people different, right? All the backgrounds, the cultures, the ethnicities, all of that we bring to the table that makes us different. Inclusion is the act of welcoming, making people feel included. So in our workplaces is making sure that everybody has that voice and that they feel safe to be able to speak up and speak their mind or speak their idea out loud. inclusion respects all types of diversity and values
Yes.
all types of diversity. And I'll add another piece, because a lot of times you see DEI, there's the equity piece, right? Equity, not necessarily equality. And equity is fairness, right? It's providing the resources or things that people need based on the needs, kind of to correct perhaps kind of historical biases or historical wrongs for certain groups of people that have been marginalized. So it's important that we have that as well, to make sure that we are making a place where everybody has really an equal opportunity to succeed.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Nikki. And I think that's the kind of the perfect capsule, and kind of just go right into the questions for Lori. But just a lot of people say it's a lack of information. Like a lot of opinions, it's a lack of information, a lot of biases. It's just, I don't know as much. So Lori, how would you define like diversity and inclusion?
A lot of what Nikki touched on, I would absolutely agree with. Diversity is who's represented in the workforce. The inclusion is everybody needs a seat at the table. And so oftentimes you don't see that. So how do you get there? How can you encourage that behavior? And there's many ways of doing it. But where do you start? I want to focus on the equity part, because that's the aha moment that I had while I was doing the journey of, researching and what we wanted to talk about today. The equity part, so many years, and I've been in the field for many, many years, you had a good day in HR if you were treating everybody equal. Everybody got the same treatment. And so there was no way that there would be any discrimination happening in your workforce. And that can't be further from the truth, from what I've read. And it just went right off in a light bulb. And I love, Deloitte had put out a report, I believe Nikki or Aaron had shared it. And the picture said 1,000 words, where you had 3 people in front of a fence and they were all on the same rock. So I gave them all a rock and they could all see over the fence. Not really. The middle one, where then now you're looking at each person and you're giving them the right support so that they all have the equal result. But the best one is the last one. And that's where the aha moment came, is where they're all standing in front of that fence. You remove that equality, you remove that fence. And that's all you have to do. And then everybody can access everything that they need to. So that's what really hit home for me. And I think, you put them all together, equity, inclusion, diversity, they all go hand in hand. They all work together to get the greater outcome.
It's great.
If I could piggyback on that, I love that you said that everybody has a seat at the table, and there are times when there are people seated at the table, but they don't feel comfortable speaking up while they're at that table. So not only do they have a seat, but they have a voice, and their voice is considered, while they're at that table. And then for me, equity is really all about, the systems that we have in place, and how do those systems treat people? Do we have human interactions into those systems? So for instance, recruiting or hiring, anything with talent acquisition, performance evaluations, all of those, do we take, as much of the human component out of it? Because we talk about biases, et cetera. How much of that human component can we take out of that and just make sure that the system itself is equitable? And I hope we touch on that at some point, because I think it's an important conversation to have. I have found that in my first year here at HID, people, and in all my years working with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think a lot of people start getting offended when they feel defensive when you come across as attacking them or their beliefs or how they were raised or their behaviors. And so right now what we're doing is we're looking at our systems to make sure that those systems are equitable and provide as much equality as we can. So I'd love to chat about that at some point.
Yeah, and we kind of keep going, take it away. Like the next question, I want to ask the next question. Kind of we can focus in more like an equity movement, but I was going to ask, can you recall a time where diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of caused a disruption or confusion in your job or in your role? Like anytime where you thought, oh, I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and you realize, oh, actually, I'm not. Like I thought I was making things equal, but apparently I kind of make things harder for someone else. So you have an example of that when you anything like that, Aaron?
I think that a lot of people will sit there and say, well, I'm not racist, or I'm not sexist, or I'm not homophobic. I mean, I don't think that people label themselves as that. But the thing is, not many of them. But I think the thing is that some people don't realize that some of the things that they say, their behaviors, the words that they use can be considered sexist or misogynistic, or, I worked with previously. I worked at the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and one of the things that we learned is that everybody has different ways of moving around. For instance, so accessibility was a big focus for us when we were working with Wish Kids, et cetera. And one of the things that I think was most poignant was we had a Wish Kid who came to an event and was judging some of our team building activities that we were doing. And one of my colleagues, just said to this Wish Kid, well, what you're going to do is you're just going to walk around and you're going to judge some of these creations that these teams are making. And the little boy, I'll never forget it, looked at the employee. He's sitting in a wheelchair, and he said, how about I roll around? I'm going to roll around and judge, and just that awareness of, saying things like that, I think are very impactful. And that's what I think this is about, is just getting us to examine the words we're using and how we're using them.
That's great. That's a great example, Aaron. Like, and something that I wouldn't necessarily think of automatically, but that's great. Just something minimal as a word, because words do matter. Lori, what about you? Like, can you recall a time where diversity or lack thereof, diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of disrupted or caused confusion in your job or in your life?
Yeah, and I'll go back to, in a past life, a merger of two companies, and I had two sets of employees, and I quickly found out that the one set wasn't accepting of the merger. So they wouldn't share information that was needed for your day-to-day tasks. And it became, I wouldn't say heated, but it became very difficult for production. And I had to come up with ways of trying to get the two groups together. And what I found in that journey, and eventually they did merge together, and those that did accept the change and then merge with the other employees were great. Those that didn't simply left the company because it just wasn't their beliefs. But what that opened up was an opportunity for new people to come in with no history of either and just add to that, mix. But transparency and the fear of the unknown seemed to be what popped up the most for everyone, no matter what, diversity they were from, their ethnicity, anything, their race. It was the fear of the unknown and what's going to happen to me. And once we kind of opened that door and sat down and had a lot of just impersonal, impromptu talks with different groups, it seemed to help. But I mean, you have to be consistent and you have to be dedicated. You can't just do it one day and say, okay, I took care of it. You have to come back the next day and say, okay, what happened overnight? And then how can we fix it? I mean, I even did a couple shifts overnight because it was a 24/7 operation where I was there to see what happened at 2 a.m, just observe, and then to offer some help on how we could get together. So that would be my example that I wanted to share today.
Yeah, and that kind of just shows sometimes you do have to go above and beyond. It's not like you said, it's not just one day, come in, get it done. Kind of have to sit with it, figure out what works best for the company, or just kind of shift with people, not just a company-wide, with people. Shift them here, move a different location, make that work. But Nikki, do you have an example of, can you recall a time where diversity, the same question, I should say.
I have to say, so I have several examples. I won't necessarily share in detail, but as an African-American woman in the workplace, in the community, and service, I have certainly encountered many examples of microaggressions about my hair, about the things that I wore to work, though professional, may have reflected more of my African heritage, for example. And those comments made me feel diminished sometimes. I've gotten to a place where I've accepted that, sometimes people are just ignorant, and They don't know what they don't know, or they don't realize what they're saying and how it affects people. But there were many times where I have felt, because of those, a direct reaction of those microaggressions, that I wanted to leave. I wanted to quit, right? And I think many employees have that experience, and the cost to us as businesses, right, is that cost of turnover, right? We lose people because we don't create environments where people feel safe. We don't create environments where people feel like they can voice their ideas. They don't feel like they can wear their hair the way that it actually grows out of their head, right? So, again, many times I have personally encountered a disruption in that sense. But when I think about it broadly, it's unfortunate when I hear about, I maybe talk to another African-American employee and they feel like they can't stay, or they want to leave because of some way that someone made them feel. It might have felt like a small, or seemed like a small comment, but a lot of times people in marginalized communities get these small bites. I think there was an analogy to a mosquito bite. Like, it may just be a little mosquito bite here and there, but if you're getting them every day and all the time, it gets to a point where it's frustrating and you want to just leave, or you maybe you act out in a way that's representative of anger or something like that. So again, lots of ways that the lack of DEI can cause disruption. Just, being in a place where you're the only, and feeling whether or not there's a truth, or, maybe you're not in an environment where you see others that look like you, and you don't understand that it's possible to, rise in the ranks. It's important to feel included or feel represented. Yeah.
That's a great point. And even still, I think we talked about this briefly. When you're looking, this is a minor tangent, but when you're looking for jobs, you're looking on the website, you want to see yourself reflected. And that's just a minor form of DE&I. You want to see yourself reflected, whether it's just a different race, or even if it's not necessarily your race, you want to see different races. Like this is a variety. Moving on. So I would focus on this one. Aaron, but we'll start with you. What changes can be implemented today? Like a lot of what Nikki was saying was, a lot of what people do, they just don't know, they're ignorant. So what can we do today to kind of create that environment where people feel safe and feel like they can actually speak and share their experiences and kind of just speak up and say what should be different?
I think the first step that's important is just the education component of it. I think that a lot of people, when they think of diversity, when they think of inclusion, equity, these terms, they automatically, especially here in the United States, automatically think of something negative. They think of politics. They think of polarization. I really think that the educating people to understand that we can all benefit from this is incredibly important. So for instance, in the security industry, we're a heavily male-dominated industry, but inclusion can help even males in our industry who feel like that, they don't belong. So you talk about, let's talk about a group of veterans and the experiences that a lot of them have seen, especially if they've been in combat, but just the fact that they're in that military structure, and then coming into a corporate structure, there are certain skills and supports that veterans need and desire in order to make sure that they fit in and make sure that they're acclimating, to civilian life after the military. So I mean, it can really benefit a lot of people. The other thing is besides the education, is I think a lot of resources would be helpful. So we have a DE&I hub that we have internally for employees to go to, and they can take a look at definitions. They can look at scholarly articles from reputable sources, not from partisan sources, not from, fringe sources, but sources that are corporate and, really have, people and companies, in mind. And so I think having some reputable resources is helpful. Those resources are also helpful because people may not feel comfortable yet talking about some of these things, but at least they can go somewhere to educate themselves, kind of quietly, silently. They can start their journey and start building that confidence on their own without having to do it publicly or in front of their team or their colleagues. So I think having those two things available is incredibly important to start doing something today. The third and final thing is, and then I'd love to hear from the others, is really just understanding where your senior leadership is on this issue and defining what you want your corporate culture to be and how you think we can get to that. So those are the three things that I think are the most important that people can start doing today. Even just having these conversations for us to be doing this. And so DeAndre, thank you to you and to Sia for doing this, because even having these conversations is important, but now it's time for us to start looking at some solutions that I think are practical. So I'd love to hear from the others about what we can start doing today.
Yeah.
And Aaron, you said something that was great. I think I haven't heard before, the privacy to learn, like giving them the space to just go over there, read a book, have the privacy, have the time to kind of get the language to be able to even have the conversation. So Lori, can you tell us time, or can you name something you think should be implemented today that kind of make the changes, create the environment that fosters a safe environment that includes everyone?
I can give an example, and a lot of what Aaron said, I had written down as well, the acceptance from the top down, and how does that look? And I can give an example. So we do town hall meetings on a quarterly basis, and it's a Microsoft team meeting where no matter where you are or what you're doing in your day, you can stop and have an hour to tune in to what's going on in the company. And our CEO, Eric, myself, our John, our COO, we all talk. So Eric starts out and he puts his own together, but he starts out with his goals for the year. And his number one goal for the year that, and he lives by his goals, is tip of the spear. And we use that terminology because of our logo, but tip of the spear is our people. So if we are engaging our employees, if we are, providing everything, a safe place to work, all the training, all the equipment they need, then they're going to go out and they're going to represent the company in the best way possible. So it's how you treat your people, how you include them, and what can you do? Recognition, community events where you bring a group of people together to do something for a needy group, another group in your community. We do the Mission 500 backpacks every year, and it is the fourth year in a row we've done it, and it's a major event. We put a whole summer picnic around it. And it's just a nice afternoon where we can get together, relax. We can put some good backpacks together. We can, have conversation. Everybody comes into town to do this, from leadership, no matter where they are, so they can sit there and engage in conversation with every level of employee. So it's important. That's what you need to do. Implement is, if you have it written in your core values, you have it in your handbook, then you have to live it. You have to talk the talk. And so that's what we do. And I think those are changes that can be implemented everywhere. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. We have a lot of room to grow, but we recognize that. We talk about it. We get together as a management team on a weekly basis, and we talk about all of our areas and where are the opportunities and how we can help each other. I think it works well. And we're still fine tuning. We still have a long way to go. You got to add into the mix too growth, right? Growth, what's happening in the outside world? Our CEO, Eric, he starts out the town hall with the state of the industry. So he talks about security on a whole and what's going on in the security world. And then he narrows it down to us, and how we can make the difference, and how we do that. So definitely, those are some changes that I felt was important to talk about today, and how you can implement them and in an HR function. Definitely policies, procedures, those help keep people on that track, because, so often your day runs away with you, right? I mean, I know when we first got on here, DeAndre, you said that your day's just starting. My day's half over, right? So, you got to stop. You got to stop and you got to think about these things, each and every one of us, no matter what position or role you're in the company.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Laura. And Nikki, same question, like what things can be implemented today, but also what can we stop doing today that kind of would help?
Yeah. So as I was thinking about the question, I think one of the first things that came to mind was self-awareness, right? Aaron, you mentioned providing resources to employees, but people have to be curious on their own to learn about different cultures, different personalities, all of the above, right? So it's starting with yourself to build self-awareness, right? It's understanding, where do I have biases? And we all do. Every person on this call, everybody that's listening to this has biases that they're bringing to the table, but we need to make sure that we are conscious of those biases and then we're actively working against those to interrupt that bias so that we are creating a safe space for all employees and we're valuing and respecting that diversity. So I'd say the first thing I would advise for people to do and not wait on a company to, put some sort of program in place. It really is building that self-awareness, right? Checking yourself. There's a really cool tool with Harvard. I think it's called implicit.harvard.com or harvard.edu, and it's a implicit bias test. Even if you just Google that, you'll be able to pull it up. And that's one thing that I found in the past that has allowed me to sort of challenge the things that I think about myself or what I believe about things, and really reflect on, well, how can I approach this differently? How can I really reflect on how will this translate into how I lead people. So just, a little tip there. And there's lots of books out there. So really just staying curious and wanting to learn and pursue those resources that your company is providing for you or not, right? There's so many things out there that people can do to educate themselves. But then, once you do that, it's also just being humble, understanding that you may make mistakes. You may say something that could be considered a microaggression to someone. But again, the process of educating yourself, being humble, being aware, it's pulling back to say, okay, I made a mistake and I'm open to learn about that mistake, and create the space for people to give you that feedback. Hey, I would like to be known as a person that if I say something out of pocket that's wrong, that people feel comfortable telling me that because they see that I'm actively working to break down the biases that I have. So I think that's probably the most effective thing to do. I mean, aside from the programs, those programs and policies are very important for us to put in place, but it really starts with the individual and taking the responsibility to learn about ourselves and to really work towards the biases that we have and breaking those down.
Great. Lori, let's hit it back to you really fast. What can people stop doing today that kind of would help DE&I and kind of would foster a good environment?
And I have one sentence and it's powerful. It's pretending that there are no issues when you're in your culture. So you put everything in place and you just smile every day and you just say that everything is going well. And that's just not the case. So stop pretending. Look, dig down in, see how you can make that difference. See how you can encourage better behavior among everyone.
Great. Thank you, Lori. And Aaron, what would you suggest people stop doing today? Like the one thing on the top of your mind to stop doing today that would actually send you on the right path towards the great DE&I in your company?
I think this is directed more towards companies. I think we need to stop proving the business case of the effectiveness of diversity and inclusion. And I think we need to start moving towards some solutions and things we can implement. We have research that goes back decades, 20, 25 years. And this is not a new movement. This is just a newly vocalized movement. But, diversity and inclusion and the data that we have has been around for a long time. So let's stop making the business case. We know what this does. We have data to back it up. Now, what I have is people come to me with a lot of anecdotal stories. So for instance, it's usually detractors that'll come to me and say, well, if we do this, then this is what's going to happen. And I say, okay, here's the deal. I'd love to hear your perspective. I'd love to hear where you're coming from. So let's set up a meeting or a chat. And you bring your data that proves your point. I'm going to bring my data that proves my point. What I have found is that again, a lot of what they bring is very anecdotal, and there's nothing that supports that diversity and inclusion is bad for business. Everything that we have shows that it's good for business. So let's stop doing the business case and let's start giving more practical solutions that people can do every single day. That would be that's the first thing that I've discovered that I would vocalize.
Yeah.
It might sound
Gotta
a little
get,
harsh, but
oh no,
I'm
gotta get
ready to move
proactive.
forward.
Gotta
Aaron, I
get
have to
proactive.
100% agree with that, because it's why do we even have to make a business case for diversity, right?
Right.
We are doing this because it's the right thing to do by people. Why would we not include someone? And again, we got to check our assumptions, because I think sometimes those anecdotes are, well, if we start looking at underrepresented populations, then we run the risk of not, we're hiring just for diversity rather than qualification. No, we're going to hire because we're going to find the best person, but we've got to do what we can do to attract diverse candidates, right? It's not about just picking a person because they're they're gay, or because they are Black or Asian, right? It's because they have something to bring to the table, and we recognize that there are qualified people in every one of those categories that we can bring into our companies and contribute to better success. And there's again data that says that companies that are ethnically and gender diverse are more profitable. Again, facts. There's several articles out there about that. So it's important for us to really just do it because it's the right thing to do, and stop trying to justify it, right?
Yeah, gotta agree with you there, Nikki and Aaron. Like, it's just the right thing to do by people. Like, this is kind of a no-brainer. But Aaron, you're gonna have to make me adjust my title for the episode now. Gotta switch it around. But we kind of touched on this one, so I may skip over this question. How can managers or employees act differently moving forward? But I think the best answer would be to kind of educate yourself, take that next step for yourself. So that's why we would say, let's go to the next question here. What is it you think more people knew about DE&I? Like you were saying, Aaron, there's reports that go back decades. Nikki, has been proven it's facts at this point. Like, why are we so fighting for the case? What do you think? What is it you wish people knew that wasn't so much focused on the business case? Like, that's already done. We know that that's confirmed. What do you wish people knew? Let's open it to the floor. Everyone to speak first.
Yeah, I'll go first. The thing for me, and I learned this from a past company that I worked for, and we were playing around with, DEI and what to call it. And we decided to call it I&D, and it was leading with inclusion. And that was really eye-opening for me, because when you think about just the act of including others and leading with inclusion, you get the diversity, you get the retention of your diverse population. Not even that, you get the retention of your employees if you're acting inclusively, right? It's starting with that. And I wish people kind of don't stop at the diversity piece, because I think when they hear that, they feel like they hear quotas, or they hear, I have to do something that I don't really want to do. But if you really start with inclusion, and again, going back to just doing the right thing, just being a good human, and, taking the responsibility and initiative to make sure that everybody on your team feels included, you're respecting their different ways of communicating, perhaps, that ultimately that leads to a team that is going to feel psychologically safe. They're going to feel like they can contribute. They can feel like they can be themselves at work and not hide pieces of themselves, right? It's that, I think, is really where it starts. And I think if people understand that, I think we can really move forward on these other pieces as well.
Nikki, I love that we had a person on our International Women's Day celebrations. I had several people reach out to me and say, well, what about International Men's Day? And when are we celebrating that? And I love those. I don't know if it was a bad faith argument or what the situation was. But I responded and just simply said, I'm so glad that you're passionate about men's health and International Men's Day. It's in November. If you'd like to celebrate, we can do some activations around it. We can get some employees together. So I'd love your help. If you want to help us organize something, we'd be glad to do that. And then I said, what is it that you're most passionate about with International Men's Day? And, which one of their, focus areas are you most passionate about? And I didn't get a response. And so I think that it's important that, this person, literally, these people just proved to the point that this is for everybody. There is an International Men's Day where we celebrate men's mental health, where we celebrate suicide prevention. We celebrate a man's role in society and how integral they are. We can't do a lot of things without men, just like we can't do a lot of things without women, or a lot of things without non-binary people. We just can't do anything without each other. And so the fact that we even have these conversations about just including people is it just still blows my mind that we have these conversations. And one thing that I wish that we would stop, that people would know about, DEI, and is that this isn't about changing anyone's belief system. This isn't about we all believe the same thing. This isn't about like my changing all of my colleagues, and employees to believe everything that I believe. This is about understanding that we all have different beliefs. We were all raised differently. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different, authentic lived experiences. How do we get those experiences to work together for the common good? In this case, employee health and wellness, but also the health of the company and the organization. So that's what I wish people knew about DEI, is that I'm willing to meet you where you are if you're willing to meet me where I am. I'm not trying to drag you to my side of anything. That's not going to happen, and that's not my goal.
Great, thank you. And Lori, you want to finish this out?
Yeah, I would say something that we've overlooked, and I talk to my managers about it when they come to me and ask me. It's self-awareness. And what I mean by that is, first, before you go into any meeting with any direct report, or even have a conversation with, what do I do now? Be aware of your own thought process. Be aware of your shortcomings. Be aware of your past experiences that may want you to jump to a conclusion, and then put that aside and sit down with that employee and then have a conversation and listen. Again, I'm going back to listening because it's so important. And, it's amazing when a manager actually does listen to what I'm telling them, and then they go back and they do it, and they come back, you were right. I was totally off base. So don't form that conclusion before, don't judge and jury and don't do that beforehand. Go in with an open mind, self-awareness, put on your hat and say, I know this, let's take this hat off and set it over here for now. I can put it on later, but for now, let's set it down and let's just focus on what's at hand and how we can resolve it to get back, if there's a disruption in the workplace, if there's confrontation between two employees, don't just assume that this person's always a troublemaker. What provoked it? It may not have anything to do with work, but it's not going to help if you just put fuel to it instead of actually put the water on it and find out what's going on.
That's great, Lori. Both you and Aaron kind of touched on the same things, kind of just listening and understanding and just moving forward, action items. Like, we're here now, we've been here for a while now with DE&I. What are we doing next? It's a great conversation between the three of you. I guess a lot to take away from it. Like, Nikki, you touched on a lot of just kind of just layman's terms, like, this is what it is. Like, we shouldn't have to make a case for it. This is what it is. This is a great conversation. I want to thank all three of you all for joining us today. We're joining Sia, the Security Matters podcast, for our inaugural episode, kicking us off. We'll be back soon with a couple more episodes in the pipeline. But for today, thanks to you all for joining us. It'll be a great afternoon.